It's scheduled to be 1 hour.
Okay, and we're going to get starting. I just noticed that the volume is a little bit low, so let us know it continues to be low. And you can go ahead and take it away.
Everyone, across Canada, I'm delighted with the turnout. And so to those of you with diabetes, persons with diabetes, welcome. And I see that I have some colleagues, healthcare providers, diabetes educators also online. So thank you for the opportunity, invitation from CDA to discuss eating well to manage diabetes. We have certainly long known that nutrition is a cornerstone of diabetes management. And as would have it, of course, nutrition intervention is very helpful in helping to reduce the A1C by 1 to 2%, which is significant in terms of healthy outcomes. So I'd like to start off our conversation with just that, eating well with diabetes, but I'd like to maybe review a few myths, if I may, about food. So myth number 1, people with diabetes can eat sweets or chocolate. And I had hoped that the slide would then advance to the next that says, the truth is people with diabetes can enjoy some sweets and still control blood sugars. Enjoy them once in a while, but don't try to live on them. And I think that that's a really important message that we need to convey, that it really is about portion control and fitting it into a healthy meal plan. Another myth, healthy foods don't rise blood sugar. Truth, even nutritious foods like apples, oatmeal can rise blood sugar to an unhealthy level. This happens if you don't have enough insulin to match the carbohydrates you eat. So clearly we have to have an appreciation of portion control and choosing healthy foods accordingly to achieve good blood sugars. People with diabetes should eat sugar-free foods. Truth, you don't need sugar-free foods to control blood sugar. In fact, many sugar-free foods will raise blood sugar. So what is the diabetes diet? The caption reads, I see you're having a bit of trouble with the new diet. The diabetes diet is not really a diet. It's an eating plan that's a healthy one, the way that everyone should eat. Canada's Food Guide is the framework of the diabetes meal plan. And if we will focus on the 4 main groups, and then we'll address some other foods that give pleasure in terms of, be it salt, or perhaps some of you are thinking about caffeine. So we'll just address those in a moment. Our interest with good nutrition and diabetes care is to help control blood glucose. It can help to control blood lipid levels and blood pressure. It can help to maintain a healthy weight or help lose weight if you are overweight. It can allow you to take less medication. It can also prevent or delay complications from high blood sugars. I've chosen to take the word diet and redefine it in a way that may be a little more encouraging and a little more positive. For the most part, diet tends to lend itself to all the foods you will enjoy eating you should really avoid. So if we take the letter D of the word diet, we want to discover the foods that rise blood sugars. So for those of you that are new to diabetes, and hopefully will attend some diabetes sessions over and above this evening, and obtain some handouts that I will present on here, or for those of you that are currently monitoring your blood sugar, it's a journey about which foods rise your blood sugars. The I part of the word diet will be increased activity, and we recognize the importance of activity in both blood sugar control, weight management, and lipid lowering. 150 minutes of activity per week is a desirable minimum amount. The E part of the diet will be the eating plan, and we'll address the specifics of the eating plan in a few moments. The other E of the word, of the letter E for diet, I've chosen as emotions. And I'd like you to give some consideration to a couple of things. What is your relationship with food? And I think perhaps the first answer might be, love it. and we want you to enjoy your food. But I also like to give some thought to your sensations of when you really feel full. When do you really feel hungry? Are you aware of those cues? Do you listen to your body cues, your senses? What are you drawn to when you are stressed, emotionally distraught? What is your comfort food? An important part of the meal plan. And the T part of the word diet is think portions. I'd like to suggest with the number of participants we have signed up this evening, we could all share a little sweet amongst all of us. So it's not about no sugars, no sweets, but it's about portion control. So for all of you on your journey with diabetes, I invite you to really think about the 4 parts of diet. And I'd like you to start with small steps that you address one area that you're going to work on and just work your way through the 4 parts. So perhaps all of you are eating well, but perhaps the portions are a little too much. Or perhaps some of you are eating well but need to increase your activity. Some of you are just starting your journey with blood sugar monitoring, just to see which foods rise your blood sugar significantly and which foods do not. So I'd like you to think about the approach to diet in a very positive way. We know that food is made up of 3 parts, carbohydrates, protein, and fat. And for the purpose of the blood sugar control, we're going to address carbohydrates first. Carbohydrates raise blood sugars and do so in a good way. They are a necessary component of brain function, energy, etc., so that we want to merit the carbohydrates for what they have to offer us. Some of our carbohydrate foods, as outlined on the slide, would include the dairy, milk, yogurts. Discussion of almond milk, soya milk would also come into this carbohydrate. We have our fruits, fresh, frozen, canned, dried, and juices. We have our grains, wheat, rye, pumpernickel, and the ancient grains. We have potatoes, we have corn, and we have our baked goods. And of course, we have liquid carbohydrates as illustrated by the alcohol listed on the slide. We have a variety of vegetables that we refer to as free food. The peas, the carrots, the beets, and the squash. Half a cup serving will not impact blood sugar significantly. All of your rabbit foods are very good choice foods as well that can be well taken into your plan. What about fruit? We addressed certainly that fruits are a combination of carbohydrates consisting of natural sugar and fiber. Let's consider the following. Compare apple juice to apple. There is a significant difference in how it rises blood sugar. The apple juice is a more processed, refined, usually fiber reduced, leaving it with an immediate spike in blood sugar. I would invite you to really be cautious with your intake of juice. Even if the label says no sugar added, remember there is a natural sugar to that fruit juice. On the other hand, having a solid fruit, such as an apple, given the fiber, the pectin and the cellulose, the fiber now slows down the rise of the carbohydrate into sugar in the body. We invite you to include 2 to 3 servings of fruit a day. Healthy, wholesome, and portion size becomes an important consideration. I'll invite you to think about cupping your hand and recognizing the amount of fruit that would fit into your hand, cupped, would be considered a serving. If we consider the various fruits that we have to choose from, if we range from the apple to the watermelon, there is a considerable difference in the fiber content of different fruits. They are all carbohydrate, but the fiber is quite different. If we look at the apple, we have a high fiber count, same as pears, berries. On the other hand, if we go to the watermelon section, or the watermelon fruit, the fiber content is much lesser. Hence, it will enter the bloodstream at a quicker rate, and you will need to eat more to feel fuller. The fiber consideration here is referred to as the glycemic index, or the GI. It's a scale that ranks carbohydrate-rich foods by how much they rise the blood sugar levels. Choosing higher fiber foods equals a lower GI, hence rising the blood sugar at a slower rate. This particular handout is taken from the Canadian Diabetes Association handout, of which you can access on the website. And we've categorized foods, and these are carbohydrate-rich foods, into 3 categories. We have the low GI, and this is scored on a scale of 1 to 100. We have the medium GI, and we have the high GI. In the consideration of how we would put this into perspective, I would invite you to think of this in the following. The high GI diet, or the high GI foods, we invite you to choose less often. They taste good, and they certainly have some nutritional merit, but limited. The medium category would be what we would encourage you to choose, and of course the low GI, inviting you to choose most often. So consider the following. The high GI foods are good, the medium GI foods are better, and the low GI foods are best. So the question now asks, is your meal plan good? Can it be better? Or can you make the best choice to get a better blood sugar control? Some of the food choices on the low GI, if we do a comparison, you'll see how 100% stone ground whole wheat bread, a heavy mixed grain, a pumpernickel or a rye would be an excellent choice, followed by the whole wheat rye or pita, and then the white breads are the ones that are categorized in the lower GI, or the high GI, sorry. Then you've got your bran cereals. And again, they're fairly easily identified there. Our grains, barley, bulgur, pastas, and noodles. Parboiled or converted rice, although is a white rice, is a desirable rice because they just steam the outer kernel, and some of the fiber is retained, hence in the lower GI section. The basmati rice, the brown rice, and couscous are all very good choices. Other choices would include sweet potato and yams, and all of your legumes, lentils, chickpeas, kidney beans, split peas, soya beans, baked beans. You'll notice in the medium section we have white potato, new potato, Yukon Gold, red skin potatoes, popcorn, stone wheat thins, rye vitas, different soups with black bean or green pea are very desirable. In the higher GI foods, so things like baking potato or russet in particular, French fries, pretzels, rice cakes, and soda crackers are, for the most part, quite refined processed and lack the fiber, so will enter the bloodstream a little quicker. So, high fiber foods more often really is a recommendation for the eating plan because they help keep you full longer, giving you a sense of satisfaction, portion control, slows down the release of the carbohydrate into sugar in the blood, and certainly has the ability to lower cholesterol levels. An all-around win-win food choice. Flax also fits into the fiber. It is an excellent source of omega-3. Flax seeds offer you roughage. Flax meal, ground flax, releases the omega-3, which is highly recommended. And of course, flaxseed oil is a desirable oil to use, but it does lack some of the fiber. If you are then using flax meal or ground flax, let your imagination add the flax to a variety of your food choices. So if you have a low fiber cereal, you might give some consideration to adding flax to now elevate it to a better level. A reminder about flaxseed use. It should be refrigerated in the fridge for 30 days, for months in the refrigerator. or a freezer. How to choose breakfast cereals. The recommendation is to work with the following guideline. Less than 8 grams of sugar per serving, 3 or more grams of fiber. Mixing and matching cereals is one way to get the best of cereal selections. Adding fiber, as we just addressed, ground flax, flaxseed, and adding protein, example almonds, are very desirable ways of adding good nutrition to your cereals. Of the dairy food group, let's go back. There we go. Of dairy, we know that all animal foods has natural sugar called lactose. Dairy contains carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. Good sources of vitamin D and calcium. Of your selections, we have milk, yogurt, cheeses, alternatives. So considering that if you're choosing a milk for the benefit of your heart and for your waste management, consider a lower fat milk. And just to clarify, if you're choosing a 1% or 2% or even a skim milk, remember that the lactose or the carbohydrate is the same. In choosing yogurt, your best yogurt is a plain yogurt, to which you could be adding a fruit with a little bit of nutmeg, vanilla, or cinnamon to sweeten it. Your cheeses have a lower carbohydrate count. Good source of protein. Quality cheeses, cheddar, Edam, Gouda, brick, mozzarella, are good choices, but be cautious of portion sizings as they have a lot of hidden fat. The alternative dairies would include soya milks, almond milks. They can be altered in terms of sugar added, so if a particular item reads as unsweetened, that would be a preferred choice. If you're choosing a flavored almond or a soya product, be cautious with the amount of sugar that's been added, particularly if it's a mocha, strawberry, or vanilla flavor. Clearly, with diabetes management, limiting the added sugars and sweets are desirable. We know that these particular foods rapidly increase the blood sugars. And I think all are familiar with examples of simple carbohydrates, such as pop, candies, jams, desserts, cake, pies. I've given you a little indication here of a visual. A teaspoon of sugar, we round off to approximately 5 grams of carbohydrate. So as the slide presents, a tin of pop, a 790 ml pop, and then the 2-liter bottle will give you a good visual of how much sugar is actually included in these beverages. To that, I'd like you to give some consideration to the newly arrived to the market vitamin and mineral waters. Choosing ones that say 10 calories or calorie-free would be desirable because many of the other ones are quite high in sugar count, approximately 40 grams of carbohydrate per bottle of vitamin mineral water. The energy drinks would also fit into this category as a fair amount of simple sugars, carbohydrate that would rapidly increase the blood sugars. In the interest of looking at labels for identifying your food items, we have created a standard label reading, and I present to you a sampler of a box that reads as 4 crackers, and I'd like to walk you through the information that the label will provide you. The calories are always listed first, then the fat, divided with the types of fats, cholesterol, sodium, carbohydrate, protein, and then a variety of vitamins listed at the bottom. So if your interest is in looking at the amount of fiber of a particular food, you'll find it's easily labeled under the carbohydrate count. Quick review. Carbohydrate consists of 3 parts: starch, fiber, sugar. It is with those 3 parts that we come up with the total carbohydrate. So if we come back to our cereal selection, you have chosen to have a cereal. Look for the fiber. Look for 3 grams or higher. So, for example, things like Weetabix, shredded wheat, bran flakes, bran buds, grape nuts are some examples of quality higher fiber cereals. Regretfully, cereals like Rice Krispies, Corn Flakes, and Special K are very low in fiber. And I think we would expect Fruit Loops to be in that category as well. On the other hand, I'd like you to also focus on the sugar that's been added to these cereals. So in the interest of choosing more nutritious cereals, look for less sugar. And the guideline as presented earlier was about 8 grams or less per serving would be very desirable, and the fiber being higher than 3 grams. Comparing labels, if there are labels to be had, whether it be cereals or other food items. The carbohydrate is clearly identified in both counts. However, having just discussed our interest in increasing intake of fiber, choosing a food that has more fiber comparatively and a lower sugar is really ultimately what you want to be looking for. The discussion about fiber, particularly in this situation, really, if we address cereals again for a moment, at the grocery store, if you are standing in the cereal aisle, if you focus on the top shelf of your cereals and the bottom shelf of your cereals, that's where you'll find your most desirable cereals. The eye-level cereals, for the most part, are refined, processed, and very often a higher sugar count. So recapping the carbohydrates. Carbohydrates rise blood sugar in a good way. Choosing whole fruit over fruit juice is very desirable. Fiber, another very important component. Adding it to your variety of meals. Choosing high fiber options as outlined in the previous slide of the glycemic index. And the recommendation for adults is a minimum of 25 grams of fiber a day. Clearly, limiting the amount of sweets and sugary foods and beverages are desirable for blood sugar control. Our next food group is protein. Protein slows or stabilizes or steadies the rise in blood sugar. These include animal foods, fish, poultry, meat, and eggs, cheese, and the plant proteins as legumes, dried peas, beans, lentils, soya, tofu, nut butters, peanut butter, almond butter, seeds, hemp hearts, chia seeds, sunflower seeds would be examples of your plant proteins. It is very desirable to include a protein at each meal. Protein slows down digestion. Combine carbohydrates with protein. Choose lean cuts of meat for animal and remove visible fat where possible. I'd like to excite you about the use of plant proteins as they are very desirable, offer good fiber, low in cholesterol, low in fat, and quite filling and nutritionally very sound. So I list for you a website called pulsecanada.com that will give you more information about the use of pulses, how to prepare, and a variety of recipes that I hope you will find inviting and will give a try to. The third part of the food group are the fats. They slow down digestion. The slowing down, however, may sound desirable, which gives you a feeling of fullness, but consider that if you are having a high-fat meal, you may find that your blood sugars will be high hours after you have eaten that food because of the slowing down of the digestion. Excess fat intake can raise your cholesterol. It can also increase your weight. So I'm going to invite you to really be attentive to the quantity of fat that you do use in your meal preparation. If I may offer you a suggestion of 3 to 6 teaspoons of fat a day, 2 to 3 tablespoons is very desirable. We have 3 types of fat. We have butter, as I refer to, a hard fat. We have margarine as a soft fat, and we have oil as a liquid fat. We then have our trans fats that are either naturally occurring or that which the industry has produced. Our spreadable cheeses, cream cheese, sour cream, cheese whiz, would fit into the fat category, regretfully not into the protein group. Limiting your high-fat foods is very desirable. Remember, though, that fat does not increase blood sugar, but has a high caloric count. I think you're all familiar with some of the foods that we're referring to here, and they all taste so good. Limiting your fat intake to 2 to 3 tablespoons a day is very desirable, and aiming for more plant fats over animal fats is also very desirable. What do your portions look like? And I'd like you to sort of take a moment and sort of look at your hands, fist, palms. Use that as your guide. So for your vegetable selections, your broccoli, cauliflower, etc., consider 1 handful of vegetables or 2 as shown in the picture. A closed fist would be an equivalent of a potato perhaps, or a brown rice. The meat portion, the palm of the hand, the thickness of your small finger, would be a good starting point. And for the men in the audience, we may need to stretch that out to the full hand size. Vegetables, again, the fistful. And the teaspoon of fat, consider the tip of your thumb as being a serving size. With your eyes, I'd like you to think about your plate serving, and we want to include the 4 food groups. Divide your plate with your eyes, or you can actually buy plates that have divisions. Make half of your plate the vegetables, the green salad, the carrots, the broccoli, cauliflower, kale, spinach, or cooked mixed vegetables. Make 1/3 of your plate the grains and starches, the high fiber brown rice, the potato with skin, or the sweet potato or the yam, or a brown pasta. The meat and alternatives, a lean meat, a lean chicken, skinless, fish, strip loin, lentils, beans, tofu would be very desirable food items. And on the outside of your plate, consider a small serving of fruit and a dairy serving to complete your meal. Another consideration in terms of meal planning is the timing of your meals. Eating 3 times a day, or 3 meals per day, is very desirable. Spacing your meals 4 to 6 hours apart, again, is encouraged. The benefits of spreading your foods over the day help to control blood sugar, provide a healthier weight, and helps with portion control. Snacks may be beneficial, and perhaps the snack will be based on, do you need one? Do you want one? Do you have one? Again, I would invite you to consider the spacing of your meals and consider snacks that would be very desirable, and the portion control is clearly important. Choosing snacks if you are hungry, again, listening to your body cues to identify when full and when hungry. Choosing high fiber snacks. As illustrated in this particular slide, the use of a small apple with some peanut butter would be quite desirable, a protein and a complex carbohydrate. Another consideration might be popcorn with a handful of nuts, or a wassa bread with a low-fat cheese or low-fat pepperoni, or hummus and dipped vegetables. Balancing your carbohydrates is critical in meal planning and blood sugar control. Trying to aim for the same amount of carbohydrates at each meal. This will help your blood sugar stay steady. We identified earlier that a serving was approximately 15 grams of carbohydrates, equivalent to 3 teaspoons of sugar. For the adult that is looking to reduce their weight, it is desirable to consider 45 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per meal, 15 grams to 30 grams of carbohydrate for snacks. For the ladies in the group, the 45 grams per meal is very desirable, and for the gentlemen in the group, the 60 grams would be desirable. So somewhere in between those two recommendations is very doable. Another consideration is the sodium in the meal plan. Sodium needs to be addressed for a number of reasons. It certainly can lend itself to water retention, which can hold back your success from weight control. It can certainly affect weight control, and it can increase your blood pressure. And clearly we need to ensure that blood pressure is held at a good level with diabetes. Processed meats, we know for the most part, are very salty, and the industry is really where the most salt has been added, rather than the pinch of salt that you may be adding to your vegetable water if you're cooking vegetables or potato water. Convenience food, we know, are loaded with salt. Tasty but loaded. Condiments and sauces have their share of salt as well. The consideration here is all about serving sizes and frequency of use. Here are some tips to shake off salt. Perhaps the first step is to get rid of the salt shaker at the table. Reduce the amount that you do add in your food and in the cooking. We need to remind that salt is salt. It is a sodium derivative, and this includes your sea salt, your kosher salt, your red Himalayan salt. They're all equivalent. However, the use of sea salt, because of its flavoring intensity, you tend to maybe use a little bit less, and so you'll hear people say sea salt is a better choice, but it's really about using less that really matters. Experiment with herbs and spices to flavor up your foods. Spice it up. Perhaps you are familiar with the Mrs. Dash, the Clubhouse, the McCormick's brand. The vinegars, lime or lemon, are very desirable alternates to salt. Pepper flakes, cayenne. The industry is trying to make a little bit stride in terms of lowering sodium in the food products that we consume. So things like your lower salt Bragg seasoning is listed there. We have some of our broths that are lower sodium. Our soups, canned soups in particular, are very high in sodium, and so there is a small attempt to lower the sodium, but we still have a little ways to go. Some of our snack foods, you may find that are now a little more available in a lower sodium. And again, I invite you to look for the higher fiber baked type chips. When label reading for sodium, look for the sodium level. And if I can have you think of it as the street color or street lights, consider the sodium of a 0 to 200 milligram count is a good level to work from. The 200 to 400 milligram sodium, consider it to be, give it some thought to how much you might be using, and anything over 400 really should be limited. Red, yellow, and green. The recommendations per day for sodium for the general population is 2,300 milligrams of sodium. For diabetes care, it is recommended that you limit your intake of sodium to 1,500 milligrams of sodium per day. On your label, you will have a percent daily value. It tells you if a food has a little or a lot of a specific nutrient. So you can use it to compare two food items. If the label reads as a daily value of 5%, that tells you that it has a little. If the daily value suggests 15% or higher, it means it has a lot. And that may be very desirable if you're choosing foods for fiber. If you're choosing foods for salt, then you would want to choose the smaller percentage. So again, in the middle of 5% to 15% is desirable if you choose to work with a daily percent value. Again, comparing two soup labels. On the left-hand side, we have a sodium count of 660 milligrams and a 28% daily value. Clearly higher than the 15% we just talked about, and the number itself over 400. On the right-hand side, we have a lower sodium version at 50 milligrams and only a 2% daily value. So do make your labels work for you. In the interest of really reducing your intake of sugar, salt, and fat, it is very desirable to get back to home basics, to home cooking. That way you can control what has been added to the foods that you eat. If we look at the processing of our foods and how it increases our salt, I'll give you an example here of your fresh cucumber, half a dozen slices, very low in sodium, about 2 milligrams. Cucumber salad with dressing, it now ups it to a 234 milligram. And once we reach it to the dill pickle stage, we're looking at a whopping 928 milligrams. The fresh chicken breast, very desirable in sodium. Once it's prepared store-bought into a frozen pot pie, again, that count raises considerably. And of course, once we get into the fast foods, without surprise, the count really flares up to over the 2,000 mark. The use of lemon or lime is a very desirable food item. Being cautious with the use of soy sauce. As you see indicated there, a tablespoon is considerably high in sodium. And we just had addressed about the table salt. A teaspoon is approximately 2,300 milligrams of sodium. Pork versus bacon versus ham, I think, is fairly self-explanatory, with a very low count in pork, a bit higher in the bacon, and of course the ham will have a high count. In the types of fats, if we come back to our fats for a moment, we have our saturated, the hard fats, the butter, the coconut oils, the animal fat. We have the unsaturated fats, the liquid fats, the oils, and non-hydrogenated margarines. And then we have the ongoing debate of butter versus margarine. For the purpose of this evening's discussion, I would like to give consideration to the fact that all of them contain the same amount of calories, and I invite you to really be cautious with the serving size that you do, because it does really add flavor to your foods. This particular comparison of dietary fats is available for you. If you have not already done so, you can download the CDA calendar that comes out yearly, and on the back page of it has this comparison of dietary fats. And just for color coding purposes, we've listed canola, safflower, flax, sunflower, corn, olive, soya, peanut, coconut oil, lard, palm, and butter and coconut. The red is the saturated component, the blue is the polyunsaturated, and the monounsaturates are the yellow. For simplicity, I'd like you to just focus on the oils that have the least amount of red, saturated, choosing the oils that have the most of the mono, which is the yellow. So looking at the comparison, you'll see how safflower oil is 77% mono, which is very desirable, followed by olive oil, then canola, and then peanut oil. Cholesterol sources. In the interest of addressing cholesterol and lipids, which is a very important part of diabetes care, just a reminder that cholesterol, 80% of our cholesterol is made by the liver. 20% from the foods that we eat that are of animal origin. In the interest of updating the egg yolk saga, 3 egg yolks a week are desirable on a low cholesterol plan. The use of shellfish should be limited to 1 serving a week, and the organ meats, again, should be limited. The biggest impact on blood sugar control is the fat. Aim for 200 milligrams of cholesterol a day. Example, an egg yolk is 300 milligrams. So again, if you limit your intake of yolks, that would be very desirable. We have 2 types of fat that we'd like to address. The LDL we refer to as the lousy cholesterol, which deposits the fat into our arteries, versus the HDL, which is the happy cholesterol. So in your lipid profile, we encourage you to have lesser fat so that you have less LDL, or the lousy cholesterol, allowing for the happy cholesterol. How do you decrease cholesterol? How do you lower the LDL, and how do you raise the HDL? We've just had a conversation about choosing lower fat foods, limiting saturated fats, avoid trans fats, limit food sources of cholesterol, choosing high fiber foods that we addressed very earlier in the session, and clearly increasing physical activity are all desirable ways to lower cholesterol. If these lifestyle changes are not sufficient, then medication may be required. I thought I'd take an opportunity to take this whole theory and perhaps put it into practice, and I've called it meal makeovers. The left-hand column will give you some ideas of food choices and how you can improve that food choices and how. So if we start off with Raisin Bran, which may be a cereal choice for breakfast or snack, consider 2 things. The raisins of Raisin Bran are sugar-coated, so now you're getting a little bit more sugar. If you chose to go with a bran flake and added high-fiber berries, you've increased the fiber, you've actually lowered the simple sugars. The use of oatmeal with nuts or hemp seeds would be also a very desirable improved choice for cereal. So choosing again a high fiber cereal is very desirable, low in sugar. Cinnamon is an excellent way to add flavor without adding additional calories or carbohydrates, but good flavor. Adding nuts, egg, hemp hearts to the oatmeal for added protein is again very desirable. If your morning breakfast consists of white toast with butter and jam, consider a whole grain whole wheat toast with PB, peanut butter, and banana slices. Use peanut butter on toast, yogurt in smoothies. Rather than having an orange juice for breakfast, just as with your toast, consider the whole orange or a smoothie. Smoothies should really consist of whole fruit instead of juice. Adding protein is a very desirable way. Adding flax to the smoothies for added fiber and omega-3 is a very desirable way of improving your food choice. If you currently are using egg and bacon bagel, you might want to consider an open-faced breakfast sandwich with over easy egg and roasted vegetables. Portion control. Cook eggs in a variety of ways. Ham and veggie frittatas. Adding more vegetables adds good fiber, low carbohydrate. If lunch consists maybe of chicken fingers and fries, consider a chicken or a tuna pita sandwich with lettuce and tomato, veggies and hummus dip. Lean meats, roasted chicken or fish are for sandwiches. Vegetables with hummus dip instead on the side of fries, instead of fries. Perhaps a natural platter is what is a small snack, but consider that a vegetable or beef chili, a whole wheat bun, or a chicken taco salad would be a very desirable choice of a makeover. Adding more beans and lentils to your salads with protein as a main dish. If your food choice is a chow mein noodle, consider a tofu and vegetable stir fry with a rice. A quick veggie fry with brown, wild, or long grain rice. A quinoa, a barley, or a noodle. Adding tofu in place of meat would be another alternative. The hamburger and fries, you might want to consider a single patty rather than a double patty with a whole wheat bun, or a small steak with roasted yam, potato, and a spinach salad. Lean meats, a baked or roasted potato, and we certainly encourage you to have at least one dark green vegetable a day. Another menu suggestion might be a creamy Alfredo penne. Consider a whole wheat penne pasta with roasted veggies with tomato sauce. A tomato-based sauce or a low-fat light cream sauce would give you far less fat. Add your favorite vegetables to bulk up your pasta sauce. Use a whole wheat pasta, giving you more fiber, more nutrition, more fullness. Takeout. Consider a homemade pizza or ask for a whole wheat crust. And more takeout pizza places are providing that demand. Homemade is always tastier, healthier, and load up with a variety of your vegetable toppings. Eating at regular times. If we recap some of the recommendations that we have been addressing, is very, very desirable. Choosing a variety of foods from all the food groups is really the goal. Limiting sugars and sweets. Reducing the amount of fat. Including foods high in fiber. Limiting salt. And remember that checking your blood glucose before and 2 hours after a meal is the best way to know how your body has handled that meal. Some of your resources. Your diabetes.ca website offers, under your recipe section, click on the Diabetes in You, and there's about 25 recipes that have been nicely listed there that you can certainly access and download for more ideas on healthy eating. Download a free copy of your healthy living calendar at the same website, diabetes.ca. I thank you for your time. I wish you healthy eating, and I'm happy to take questions from the participants.
Great. Thank you so much for that. So informative. I found it.
That's a whole hour.
I find these are so educational. They kind of serve as a wake-up call, plus a review, plus education kind of all in one there. So a question from Aisha. said, I want to know how people adapt when diabetic diet myths are explored.
Oh, come again. So how the diabetic diet is
How people adapt when the diabetic diet myths are explored. I guess once you kind of talk about them and educate them on it.
Sure. Well, I think it comes with, you know, a desire to embrace on how you can change some of the foods that you do take. And I think people feel very satisfied that they know that they can maybe fit in a few of the, like for example, the sugars in foods or choosing higher fiber foods. So I think it is desirable, and I certainly encourage people to really work with their team, with their educators, attend sessions, whether it be the ones that we did here or just coming to your educator and really getting the best out of life by seeing your diabetes educator, nurse, and dietitian team and doctor. I think that's, so it's a work in progress, and one needs to kind of come at it with, and this is why I choose not to work with the word diet, but more as a meal plan and choices that you make.
Great. And we have a next question, which is how much protein is in sunflower seeds?
Oh, how much protein?
For Patricia.
Well, there's certainly...
If I'm walking around, I actually think I have a thing of sunflower seeds right here in my cupboard. I do.
So you're obviously home.
Let's see what I got here. In a quarter cup, we're looking at 7 grams of protein.
Fair enough. You beat me to it. I was just getting it out of my book. So 7 grams of protein is the answer for the sunflower seeds. That's the equivalent of an egg white.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I never thought of it in that conversion sense.
Like, you know, certainly now the quality of the protein will vary a little bit because the sunflower seeds are a plant base and the egg is a protein base, right, an animal base. But suffice to say that it is a good quality protein. On the same subject, if I could just add about eggs, the use of flax meal or ground flax, if you take a couple of tablespoons of ground flax, mix about 3 tablespoons of lukewarm water and let it sit for a couple of minutes, you'll see how it starts to gelatinize, and you can use that flax.
Sorry, I just had a bunch of traffic outside my window here. Okay, the next one from Jerry is olive oil recommended to consume and to cook with?
Olive oil is a very desirable oil to use. However, it is recommended because it does not have a high heating point or, you know, just tolerance of heat. It is recommended that you not heat olive oil. Do serve it sort of as a drizzle. Cold would be preferred because it doesn't have a high tolerance of heat.
Okay. What are some other ones recommended? I know you mentioned some in the presentation.
Peanut oil is a very desirable oil for a stir fry because it is heat tolerant. The use of canola oil is a moderate, and that's, again, a very desirable one. But the peanut oil would be more for the stir-fry hot, the really hot use, right? Yeah.
And I'm guessing that also affects the taste, right?
Yeah, a little bit the taste, yeah, for sure.
Yep.
And now with the new technologies that we have and the kitchen gadgets, participants may be familiar with the active fry, where you just add 1 tablespoon of oil to fry up your potatoes. They are excellent. What an excellent... and sweet potato fries are excellent in that active fry.
Great.
Good.
The next one is from Dale and Iris. We've got a lot of good questions here. Should you eat every meal on time, even if you do not feel hungry?
The timing of the meal certainly should be within a 4 to 6 hour interval. The hunger part is, you know, if there really is, I am not hungry, you know, delaying the meal by an hour is fine, but just having a little something, even a half a cup of milk, half a glass of milk, a half a cup of yogurt, a couple of crackers, is probably desirable. But if there really is no appetite, no hunger, we have to explore what's really going on. Maybe we need to increase the activity a little bit. But you need to eat to appetite too. And individuals have to identify that point of which, what's the hunger and what's the need to eat, right? And when is the fullness.
Yeah. Question from John. On the subject of pasta, should it only be whole wheat? I always hear about whole wheat.
Well, whole wheat is a desirable choice, although the question may be lending itself to alternate pastas that are gluten-free. So the ones that are quinoa, flax, and maybe a corn base. The problem with pastas, for the most part, is you need, a lot to feel fuller. So clearly choosing a whole wheat pasta is to your advantage, because two things either will happen. If you're not fond of a whole wheat pasta, maybe you'll eat a little less, which is good portion control. The whole wheat pasta will give you more nutrition, more fiber, and will enter the bloodstream at a slower rate. So that is desirable.
Great. Message from Jerry here. Question: is the high fiber cereal's benefit offset by adding milk and fruit, so lactose and fructose?
The higher the fiber of the cereal, certainly, for example, an all-bran cereal is 17 grams of fiber. So the amount of milk that you add to your cereal, if you just float your cereal, it might only be, a quarter of a cup. But if you sink your cereal, you might be looking at 2 cups. So it's really relevant to how much milk you're actually putting on. And because milk has added protein, you're not putting in just carbohydrate, right? The choice of fruit should be small serving of fruit, and it should be a high fiber fruit. The berries would be desirable, or sliced apples would be more desirable than an apple sauce that has a lot of the fiber removed.
Great. This one's from Peggy. Just a comment: eating oatmeal or pasta shoots up her blood sugar, and then I remember in the presentation she said that you recommend them.
They are very desirable foods. The problem, though, is maybe the type of oatmeal. So consider steel-cut oatmeal as a preferred choice compared then to the large flakes would be the next up. Being very careful for the instant type of ready-to-serve oatmeals. In that particular situation, if oatmeal or cereals are driving the blood sugars, perhaps you need to look at adding more fiber or clearly adding protein at that breakfast meal. So be it the hemp hearts, the chia seeds, adding an alternate animal protein, a peanut butter, a flax may be desirable. And so sometimes we have to problem solve a little bit with the use of certain cereals and seeing what can be added and combined. If it doesn't work at a particular meal of the day, then perhaps position cereals in a more active time of the day and see if that's more desirable.
I have a question from Elspeth. What do you think of the very low-carb boot camp diets in the book, The Diabetes Miracle, in which you limit your carbohydrates for about 7 weeks?
Right, and anything less than 100 grams of carbohydrate a day is as low as really should go, just for sanity more than anything. People will push to the limit, and there is some merit to it. I think the idea is to really choose and work towards a goal that you can sustain and not just a marathon run. Kick-starting with a lower carbohydrate diet is really what it, as a starting point clearly, but we need to have a clear understanding that we want to sustain well past the 7 weeks. And the choice of carbohydrate matters. It isn't just about counting a number to come up with that low end of 100 grams. It's really about choosing complex carbohydrates and portion control.
Great. Another one from Michael. I've heard that as a diabetic, I should avoid bananas due to natural sugars. Is this a truth, or is it okay in moderation?
Moderation is certainly the key here, and just for description purposes, appreciate that bananas are 100% carbohydrate with very little water content. A 3-inch banana is 10 grams of carbohydrate or 2 spoons of sugar. A 6-inch banana is 4, and a 8-inch banana is 6 teaspoons of sugar.
Oh, wow.
You need to position bananas in a meal plan that's going to be desirable and matched with an activity. So if today is an active day, bananas may be the day to use them. If today is a sedentary sit at the computer day, that may not be in your best interest to be using bananas. But they do offer good vitamin, mineral, fiber count. If you're trying to reduce your weight, be careful with your intake of bananas.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that before.
Yeah, you need to move more and eat a little less.
Yeah, great. Another question here. How much trans fat is desirable?
Well, we're looking in terms of, on the label, first off, if you look anything less than 7% on the daily value is a good starting point. To suggest that, zero trans fat be the amount, I mean, there are naturally occurring trans fats and meat fats. So we're looking more at the what's added to the food items. So thinking about the baked items, the snack foods, that's really, so the lower the better. So look for the percent daily value and look for where it says, anything less than 7% is desirable. And that's probably one of the easiest ways to answer that question. Otherwise, it gets a little more complicated in terms of grams based on saturated versus unsaturated and all that approach.
Great. Next one here from Patty. Have you heard about the WeightWise program?
The WeightWise program, well, perhaps not in the context that the individual is asking, but, WeightWise means two things. Losing weight appropriately or weighing your foods to lose weight, or I'm not sure that I'm reading that question.
Okay, well maybe we can get a clarification in the question pod there.
It's a WeightWise, is that what it's called? Or WeightWise?
Yeah, WeightWise.
WeightWise. So I suspect that it probably has some good merit. I'm not familiar just as is, if it's a book but I think...
Yeah, she said yes, WeightWise.
Yeah, it certainly has, its title suggests that it has some good merit, but I'm not, just off the top, I'm not quite familiar with all the particulars of it. I can certainly find out.
Okay, great.
Moment.
No problem. I get the next one here from Patricia. Did I hear you correctly to choose cereals on the top and bottom shelves in the grocery store?
Of the cereals, that was correct. Just to sort of simplify the selection of cereals, if you go to the top shelf or the bottom shelf of the cereal aisle, you're likely to make better choices.
I guess it's all about advertising in the middle aisle, right? The prime space.
Yeah, it's all about marketing, you bet. I'm just coming up here with a WeightWise clinic program classes. Sounds like this is happening at the Royal Alec, WeightWise Clinic Royal Alec in Edmonton, Alberta. So I don't know if that's...
Oh, Edmonton.
I'm not sure that that's what they're referring to.
Yes, she did say it's in Edmonton.
Now, if that is the case, there is a WeightWise Adult Management Clinic. It's a surgical intervention for weight management. It's a bariatric specialty clinic.
Got it.
That may be what they're referring to. So that's a whole different... the clinic involves behavior modification, counseling for nutrition, drug treatment and or surgical treatment for obesity, and coordinating care and transitioning patient back to their family physician. We're certainly are observing a lot of good success with bariatric surgery in diabetes management. So there is some indication that this works well, but it's a whole clinic and it's a whole educational component, and clearly number one is about behavior modification. It speaks to the whole aspect of staying dehydrated, eating regularly, stop eating when full, know when your limits in terms of hunger or appetite, satiety. So if that's what the individual is referring to, that's what that program is about, and certainly has some very good merit, and that would be in Alberta. And clearly at the Royal Alec. So that's my alma mater.
Great. So the next one is from Angus. Can you please talk about the effect of a beer or a glass of wine?
Well, a beer is the equivalent of 15 grams of carbohydrate, 3 spoons of sugar, so it has a carbohydrate value to it. And if we do a comparison of a glass of milk, 8 ounces of glass of milk is 3 grams of carbohydrate with 15, or 3 teaspoons of sugar with 15 grams of carbohydrate. Please do not interchange carbohydrate beer for carbohydrated milk. Milk is different, right? So we're not inviting you to have beer on your cornflakes, right? The challenge with beer or any alcohol, so if it is a beer choice, a lower carb may be very desirable. A Canadian 67, for example, is 2 grams of carb compared to a regular beer of 15, making it a lower calorie count of only 67 calories versus 150 for regular beer. If choosing wine, a 4-ounce glass of red or dry wine would be certainly desirable, and the use of a gin, vodka, rum, or whiskey, if it's an ounce and a half, would be a very low carb. The challenge with alcohol is really about moderation, 1 to 2 drinks a day. No saving up is really a caution. And working it into the plan and making sure that you have some food to go with it. And inevitably the beer nuts with the beer, but really making better choices is really to your advantage. So be very cautious. The one challenge with alcohol, it's again volume related, but it can have a delayed low blood sugar effect, and so you need to really be attentive to that in terms of playing havoc with blood sugar control, let alone weight management, and it's a trigger for triglycerides as well. It can elevate your triglyceride levels.
Got it. Okay, let's see the next one here. There's kind of two questions on kind of comments about coconut oil. That Peggy read that coconut oil is supposed to be good for us now, and then there's another question on the use of organic coconut oil.
Yep. The coconut oil is a really hot topic right now, and the challenge is when we look at the makeup on the chart that I presented in the slide, it does show it as 91% on a scale of 1 to 100 as a saturated fat. The current thought is if it's a cold-pressed prepared oil, then it seems to be a little more desirable because it doesn't adhere to the vessels of the body. So that's kind of what gives it merit. The fact still remains, though, that it is a fat source, and one needs to be still attentive to the amount of food that you do take in, or the quantity that you do take in. So going back to the recommendation of 2 to 3 tablespoons of fat per oil. If coconut is being used, and if you're using, whether it be the organic, which by the way, organic doesn't always make it a healthier choice, it still is a fat and a high fat one at that.
Okay. And another oil, how does palm oil rate?
Yeah, it's a high saturated fat, not quite as high as the coconut oil, but certainly fits into that category. So again, you want to be, careful with the choice of palm oils, and it's one of those trans fats, right? And it's used quite extensively in our baked products and items, and so you want to make use of less of those items if possible. And I'm just going back to our slide where I gave you that indicator. Your palm oil is 51% compared to 91% for coconut oil.
Actually, let me see. I could probably increase the slide a little bit.
It's a little bit fuzzy, but I, was just getting it captured in the right way. But I think if folks can go to download that calendar, they'll have a beautiful 8.5 by 11 size page of the comparison of dietary fats.
Perfect. Any tips on remembering to test when on a busy schedule?
Okay, try again. I didn't hear the complete question.
Oh, yeah, any tips on remembering to test when on a busy schedule?
Oh, a busy schedule. Well, the technology is upon us. Watch with a reminder. Your iPad or your iPhone. I think it's just missing the dietitian in the technology here that sort of says, reminder, beep, beep, would be, there's all kinds of tricks to remind yourself, but I think having the tool at your fingertips is probably a very good reminder, and so that would be 2 suggestions right there. In the interest of busy schedules, don't let busyness take over your diabetes care. You need to take charge. It's an important, so find ways to try. And if Monday through Friday on a work day doesn't work, make time to check blood sugars on alternate times that you don't on the weekdays. Now, this particular comment may not be applicable to those of you on insulin and adjusting and that type of thing. I'm just giving as a general guide some of the tips, on how to remember to test. But I think the watch and the beeper in your iPhone might be very desirable.
Yeah, there's a lot of alarms and gadgets we have now that we can use.
Oh, a lot, for sure.
Or your watch, even.
Absolutely. That would be very... If I could just come back to the weight-wise, what comes up is another program on here that's just called, Weight-wise, and that's just a website, a generic website that lets you... healthy eating, getting physical, ask dietitian, options for support, newsletters. You can obviously, that's another, almost like a website. So it depends on how the question came up at the weight-wise, if that was truly about the bariatric surgery or if it was on this website where you can sign up and track your food intake, your physical activity, calculate.
Yeah, it looks like Patty, she just wrote back that she did have the surgery.
Oh, okay.
I'm just reading the comments here. So it helps you with the life-changing things here. So it really, really helped her out.
Yeah, good, because this particular White Wise is the British Dietetic Association.
Got it.
Yeah, so depending on the same title but a different reference.
Mm-hmm. And then Peggy, just a comment, she was unable to lose weight following the CDA recommended meal plan, but was able to do so when she restricted her bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, and other like carbohydrates.
Absolutely. Everyone's ability to lose weight will vary. Control of carbohydrates is really key in all of this. Increasing activity is also the other component that's equally important that we need to give some. And, portion control is really what matters. Sometimes the use of potatoes and pastas, it's hard to reduce them to a smaller portion. So when you're really trying to be successful in your weight management, the comfort foods sometimes are the ones that you need to sort of reduce or just really kind of substitute them with alternates, and you will achieve successes. But clearly exercise is important, and setting some SMART goals, in terms of just measurable and attainable, realistic goals and time-wise in order to be successful are very, very important as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. I'm just doing a quick scan of the chat because I noticed there's some questions in here. Is it true that the liver releases glycogen approximately every 5 hours?
Give or take in sort of that time, and we find that in times when you're not eating, that's when the liver will release the glycogen, right? So often what you'll observe is you go to bed at night and your blood sugars may be in a desirable range, and when you wake up in the morning, because it often is a longer than a 5-hour time, that's when you'll have the release of the liver, the sugar from the liver, because it's a longer time.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody else, sorry, I'm just reading through the chat, but if anybody else has any questions, if you want to write them in the QA pod because they stream really nicely, and then I could just take a look at them there. Sorry, I'm just doing one quick post. I think I saw one more question in here. And I'll just wait another couple seconds here if there's any other questions that come in and feed through here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's another one on coconut oil addicts. And then there's some people asking just about the presentation. So this is being recorded, the audio, and then the presentation. So when the Diabetes Association gets it up on whatever the website or the place they're going to store it, they'll send out an email so everybody can access it.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah. And I see you've put up your information here. There's a couple people who are asking about the PowerPoint slides.
Aha. Well, for the right price, I just might. Well, actually, they now have become property of the CDA. So, at best, I'm happy. I purposely put my home email for the benefit of the audience there because, certainly addressing this from a work perspective may become a little bit problematic we had so many attendants today. I'm so delighted at the numbers.
I know, it was great.
Yeah, I'm happy to send them out. I mean, if I get some, requests, I'm okay to do that as well. If not, what can also be, I think when it's posted onto the website, can there be an attachment with the slides? Can we do that?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to look into. So once you guys get the link out, I'm also going to just type in the diabetes email. It's infobc@diabetes.ca. So if anything wasn't addressed here or you had any further questions, you can definitely email them out over here. Great, and should do a last scan of questions.
That covered the basics. Sort of covered a little bit of everything, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Eating is meant to be pleasurable, everyone, and we want you to enjoy your food. We want you to choose foods that are appealing, that have mouth texture, digestibility. It's not about dieting. It's really about healthy eating and managing blood sugars and keeping well, and keeping your blood sugars and just being healthy.
I have another question here. How many apples, oranges, bananas per day is recommended?
Well, 2 to 3 servings of fruit. So if you choose to make them all oranges, there's your answer. If you make them a variety of 1 orange, 1 apple, 1 pear or berries, 2 to 3 servings of fruit are desirable. Start with that. Very often you like fruit, and I'll give another little, if fruit is really something that you tend to indulge in, consider freezing fruit, in particular grapes, for example, that they really can give you a nice satisfying sweetness without overindulging. It's quite remarkable how you might find that you can only eat 10 frozen grapes, but you might be able to eat down to half a bag in a sitting if they sit right beside you.
Yeah, yeah.
Really enhance the sugar and really satisfy you with a smaller amount.
And what about things, for example, juicing? I got a juicer last month. I kind of juice a mix of veggies and fruits. I'm not diabetic, but I always wonder, if I juice
very desirable
oranges
to juice. The caution with juicing is if the extractor extracts the fiber, then you really lose out on a lot of the merit that we've talked about in terms of.
Yeah.
So that's the first consideration, that really the fiber should be retained. The second consideration is what the juice items are. So if it's primarily the low-carb vegetables like the kale, celery, spinach, if 80% of the juicing is the low-carb vegetables, and that's very desirable with 20% of fruit, then that's a good combination, right? But if you're juicing, let's say, carrots, for example, and the fiber is being extracted and not being retained, then you're getting a fair amount of concentrated carbohydrate coming in, and that can be problematic for shooting up the blood sugar or spiking the blood sugar. Yeah.
And I've also heard, related to that, they say to eat the fruit and juice the vegetables because of fiber, like you were just mentioning.
Either way, I mean, certainly eating the fruit is more desirable.
I still eat the fruit, but I do kind of a mix of both.
So that's for sure. The fruit will give you just that much more fiber. It exercises your chewing and slows down, hopefully, the rate at which you eat. But, it's all about fiber. Assuming that intestinal gut will manage some. There's not overextended.
Aisha says, thanks a lot. And what do you think about low carb and high fat and high protein for managing diabetes?
I think one has to be a little careful with the duration of that menu planning aspect. And when I say duration, I don't mean a weekend sort of. So the question, I think, relates a little bit to the Atkins diet. Extended use of high proteins and high fat can lend itself to an undesirable amount of things happening. I mean, certainly it can raise cholesterol for some folks, like the LDL cholesterol. A high protein diet can play havoc with kidney function, and we're talking an extended period of time here. There's a number of things that can occur. So really it's about balancing. You're looking for a sustained plan and not just a hit and miss type of meal plan. And if people are struggling with food planning and just with weight control, then consider increasing the activity, because that's a really important part of this too.
Ken, you had a question about the CDA calendar. And maybe if you could just, I think you discussed the calendar, didn't you?
I did, yeah. The calendar you can download it from the website at the diabetes.ca there. One of my last slides.
Yeah.
When I last looked,
there you go.
So you can download them in black or white. Or perhaps your local branch, if you happen to be close to one, they may still have some.
Yeah.
But it's a very nicely laid out calendar, excellent recipes, good tips, and it's a review of what tonight's presentation as a follow-up over and above the slides.
Another question here. I've been told to drink, I think it's kefir or kefir milk to help sleep. What is good?
Oh, heating milk has long been thought as a sleep enhancer because it activates the protein, the tryptophan. Eating the kefir is probably more to do with the protein component of it rather than, now I'm not aware that it is necessarily a sleep inducer, but it certainly is desirable to consume because it is a healthy choice. It's low in carbohydrate and has good quality protein. So sometimes for nighttime snacking, that's very desirable.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of one approach to that, but
Okay, so we're just winding down the questions here. Just kind of going through them to make sure I haven't missed anything.
so kefir for sleep, right? I think was the question.
Mm-hmm.
For sleep problems. So that might be this is taken from the Sleep Center. Oh, Sleep Center. Yeah. I think it's desirable. I mean, there's no disadvantages to using it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure that we have a clear understanding of sort of what it actually, but it's the protein. And this was a heated kefir, right? So I think it's, again, to activate the protein. Yeah, contains effect on milk.
All right, and I have Mary's question here. Sorry, Mary, I see your question here, but it cut off on my screen, so I was missing the last little bit of it. If you're gluten-free and diabetic, the carbs are double as compared to the wheat-based counterpart. Is it satisfactory to cut the grains in half to stay on track with calories and carbs? Or am I suggesting limited the number of servings? Is that a healthy choice? I've developed a wheat sensitivity, and this is not an option for me.
The one consideration with gluten-free grains is that, one, they lack fiber and they're low in iron.
Okay.
So one has to give some consideration that their digestibility and their absorbability is quite different. And so very often, if you do have celiac and diabetes, we need to really monitor the quantity of these alternate grains that you do use. And obviously, we need to find ways, and flax is a very excellent way of adding some fiber to these grains, or substituting them with an almond flour as an alternative for baking or using as a grain. But that's the one consideration, because they are lower in fiber.
Yeah. Great, thank you so much. I think we've wrapped up the questions. I just have some closing slides, so if anybody has anything else, just feel free to type it and then we'll address that. So just again, I want to thank you. I want to thank everybody for participating here, coming to join our session, and I want to thank you, Louise, for running the session. It was a very good, informative session. The development and delivery of impactful programs such as the new Canadian Diabetes webinar series is made possible through the generous support of our donors. And if you enjoyed the webinar and would like to make a donation, please visit our website. Oh, sorry. Just flipped down there. Please visit our website at www.diabetes.ca, or you can call 1-800-BANTING. And again, I would like to thank everybody for this. The spring webinar series is generously supported by Lily, and I would that you'll be sent an evaluation survey tomorrow and encourage you to complete it. The survey should only take about 2 minutes and provides valuable input for our association. And that looks like it. We're done with all the questions. We had a lot of great questions, and thanks everybody for joining us. I look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Happy eating. Bon appetit, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.